Hello, everybody, and welcome to another webinar. I think this is about the 17th of the 2 days. We're well into it now, and I'm very pleased to say that we're joined by Asif Gillani from Parrots. This webinar is going to be specifically on the Parrot Anafi USA. So a drone obviously with huge use cases in the public safety world, which is my background and my area. But also in other markets like inspection and survey as well. Do some clever little things that the Anafi USA, which we've got here, which the drone can do. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through an introduction to the unit, where it came from, why it was developed. We'll take a look at some of the sort of key features that make it a useful drone in the world it's currently being used in, and we'll also look at hopefully some use cases. I know I've got some from a Coptrz point of view in terms of supplying the equipment, and I'm sure Asif's got a few they've got maybe a bit more internationally as well, which we might be able to share some interesting ways in which the kit is being used. So as we get started, Asif, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself and about Parrot as a company, and then we'll start to move into the equipment itself and what we're here to discuss.
Sure. So hi, everybody. So I've been at Parrot since, I originally joined in 2007, and I was around at Parrot when we launched the first drone. It was called the AR drone, and it's back in 2010. So it was 11 years ago since we've been in the drone industry. Parrot is a French company. We're based in Paris, and we're the leading European drone group. And lots of our focus, which we'll be talking about today as well, is about the fact that we are European and we take data security and security as a whole really seriously. It's one of the key things about Parrot, especially us being a European company, who's GDPR compliant as well. As Parrot, we're part of a group of companies. So I work for Parrot Drones. We have some sister companies in the group as well that other people may also know. So Pix4D, for example, is wholly owned by the Parrot Group, as is SenseFly. And there's some other companies as well, some that did some webinars yesterday, for example, like Plank, who we have investments in as well. So Parrot is quite a large group of drone companies. And I said the leading European drone group.
So yeah, I mean, Parrot's not just this. Is it here or this up here? It is there's almost an ecosystem, isn't there, with Parrot? It's a range of kit, but also software and fixed wing and interesting stuff like Plank developments like that as well. And what you mentioned as well about being Europe's leading drone group, obviously, what springs to mind there is kind of if you can name any other European drone manufacturers, a lot of them are a lot more niche, and they'll sell units to specific use cases, 1, 2, 3 at a time. Whereas Parrot is very much, supplying to governments, huge organizations, thousands of drones at a time, and that's kind of more where you guys have your strength, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we're proven as a drone brand. So we've sold over 4.5 million drones to date. And there aren't many companies that can say that. So, not just from the hardware, but it's a software you've got to take into account. So the Free Flight 6 app, which is been around for a while, and we're constantly updating and improving that to make it incredibly powerful. And then not only that, we have an ecosystem, as you probably know. So we work with many different other external companies as well. So we have an SDK. We have other partnership programs in place as well. So that enables people to create their own solution and add it onto our package in effect. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it fits so well with what we do at Coptrz as well, because we're very much not here's your drone and off you go. There's everything built around it on our side. It's the training and the support. And for you as a manufacturer, it's the software and all the other side of it as well. So I think that is why we get on quite well. Target stuff in a similar way.
Yeah, it's for both of us. I think it's the whole ecosystem. It's not just a product in a box.
Yeah, definitely. But let's loop back around. We'll come back around to security. Being non-Chinese, the encryption, where it's developed, all that kind of stuff. But I just want to get a better idea for the guys that are tuning in as to why the Anafi USA specifically. So this drone, why that was developed, what the jump up is from something like the standard Anafi, which we see up here, where that came from, why the requirement was there, and why you guys developed a system with what we'll get into is a hell of a lot of upgrades compared to your standard smaller drone.
Sure. So just over 2 years ago, we were approached by the American government to develop a short-range reconnaissance drone for them. And there were a number of other companies that were approached, but we were the only non-American brand to be selected. So basically, it's gone through, they had a set criteria that we had to follow, and that has become the Anafi USA. And around that, to give you an example, they wanted a drone that was under 500 grams. They wanted a powerful zoom. It needed to be IP rated. And of course, talking about the security, 100% of the components on this drone, so 100% of the critical components are non-Chinese, and 100% of the critical components have been vetted by the American government, have been cleared as well. So that's where it all started from. That program became the Blue SUAS program for the American government. And now that program's now in place. There's 5 companies that are part of this program. 4 of them are American, and us as the only non-American brand that's approved for use by the American government. So that's the history of the drone, and that's where it came about.
Yeah. And then when you said within that, you said all the critical components non-Chinese. So it's built and constructed in Boston. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. It's made by a company, or on our behalf, a company called Neotech, who's a supplier to the American government and military already. So it's our product. They manufacture it on our behalf in Boston, and then we get weekly deliveries from the USA. So, it is an American product, American-built product, and that's why it's got the Anafi USA is the name as well.
And then when you say critical, obviously that's because anything that's got any plastic in it is probably going to have something that's come from China at some stage, whether it's just one of the molds for the props, something like that. Yeah. It's always going to have something that's Chinese made. So no, that makes sense as a caveat. We'll let you off with that one. So moving on then into the security side, I think that's quite a nice segue into that. Why was the decision made to build in the US, and why was the decision made to go heavy into this? Because naming it the Anafi USA is, if you don't mind me saying, it's pretty on the nose. It's very much we are European. The drone's made in the US. It's designed in France, available through a UK distributor. So it's very much we are, where we are based from in the world. So why was that decision made, and why is that important?
Well, to be honest, you've answered the question yourself, really. That's exactly why we did it, because we wanted to make a powerful statement that we are European, we're not Chinese, and this product is built in the USA. And, we are GDPR compliant as well. So in terms of data protection, GDPR has the strictest standards in the world. And then being built in the USA, we know that we'll then have, we'll be able to be approved by the American government as well. So, we can work on both sides there. And in terms of, security, I said, we keep on banging on about it because it is incredibly important now. And not just for the police and military users that we know that we sell our products to very easily, but the other type of user, the professional pilot, drone pilot, who might only have one product. But with our drone, they're going to be assured they can be able to fly that in any area. There are some areas now, and there's some companies that we work with that refuse to have Chinese products on their premises, as you know.
More and more areas as well, isn't it? It's not just, you might think it's obvious, it's just that the military base over in wherever, but now it's certainly growing. Yeah,
and yes, some of the power generating companies, some of the infrastructure companies, and some of those others which are close to sensitive sites. And the other thing with us as well is that we don't enforce any no-fly zones. So, it's down to the pilot to ensure they're complying with the regulations. But that means they are then free to fly the drone wherever they need to fly it.
I was going to ask you about that. That was going to be my next point, because we did a demo last year, and we had a range of kit from Parrot and from a couple of other manufacturers. And 2 of the drones we had, we couldn't take them off. And we'd done the pre-planning. It looked like it was unrestricted, and went to take off, and it was just being caught in a geofence of a certain area. So we had to do a static demo of some of the drones, just sit them down and show what the cameras could do. But with the Anafi, we got out of the bag and just threw it straight up in the air. So that was a conscious choice then, wasn't it, by Parrot? It's not we've just left out this bit of software. That's something you've done on purpose.
Yeah. And again, that's in our marketing messaging as well, with that we don't enforce no-fly zones. What we do, we leave it up to the pilot to ensure that they are complying with the regulations. But that means it's very easy to then fly wherever they need to fly to.
I was going to say that makes a lot of sense, because if you're piloting something like an Anafi USA, it's very much not a hobbyist drone.
Yeah.
You will have done your GBC training. You will have done probably some coaching on the drone itself, maybe thermography coaching, all this kind of stuff built around it. You're not just going to buy one and then fly it over a football stadium. You'd hope anyway. So, those kind of things, and it also blends in nicely to the fact there's no collision avoidance on the system. And I guess that's for a similar thought process has gone into that.
Yeah, the onus is always on the pilot to ensure they're in control of the drone, and it's literally that simple. We put the pilot in charge, so they need to ensure they're flying legally, and they need to ensure they're flying safely as well. It's that simple. And then when it comes, we started speaking about it and then got sidetracked. But in terms of, like I said, the data security side as well on us, I was going to say that on the Free Flight 6 app, we worked with a company called Bishop Fox. So Bishop Fox are the largest private offensive security company in the world. What that actually means is they're a company that went into our app and then looked for any leaks of any data. Was there any code in there that shouldn't have been there, or is anything seeping out that shouldn't be there? And with that, they completely cleared us. So it's on our website, it's on their website as well. They've got a case study, all the different parameters they checked us for, and the fact that we were cleared as well.
Have they done that with any other drones? Is that something that's common, or that kind of test, is that commonplace for drones?
Bishop Fox didn't do it on other brands, but there have been some other companies that have done it on other brands, which have been widely publicized, and they have found some data concerns in terms of some code in apps that shouldn't have been there. Obviously not one of our products, it was one of the Chinese brands. But that's widely available on online.
I was going to say that's not, it's not sort of conjecture at this point. It is that I've read the studies, and they make interesting reading. It by no means says you can't buy these products because they're unsafe, but it certainly says if security is a top concern, maybe you should think twice and look at other options. That's kind of the impression I got from it anyway.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on security, Asif, you want to talk about? I know we've not mentioned sort of drone to controller encryption, that kind of stuff, without getting too technical. Anything else around that side you think's worth talking about?
I said we take drone security and security as a whole incredibly seriously. So we have a privacy and security section on our website as well, so people can actually look at our security policies and all the things we've got in place, both as a company on our server side, etc., but then also between the drone and the SD card and the controller, etc. So going to the SD card. The SD card on the Anafi USA is encrypted as well, so you can create your own password on that, and it means that nobody will be able to access any data that's on the drone. Also, what you can do, we also make an SE range, which we don't publicize on our website, but that's by application to yourselves, which sells to governments, and that has even more enhanced security measures in place.
I was going to loop around to that towards the end, because obviously we don't want to go into huge detail on it because it is quite specific. But I mean, since we're on the topic, I don't know if you want to give us a couple of little features that it could, because there is a few interesting things the SE does that on the face of it, you certainly wouldn't want a standard operator being able to do. I think is that fair to say?
Yeah. So on the standard drone, for example, on the return to home, you can, on the standard Anafi USA, you can, on return to home, you can return to the takeoff point, return to where the pilot is now, because, if you're doing a site survey or you're chasing after somebody, you might have walked ahead, and the drone will return to the pilot. It will also return to a location of your choosing, and then on the SE version, it won't return at all. So that is some military uses, as you can imagine. That's one of the extra functions on there. The drone can fly completely data empty as well. So the drone is then captured. There's no data to be found on the drone. And then you can turn off the LED light as well on the drone.
Yeah, which is it's a pretty simple one, but again, it's a safety feature that you need to have for an operator, which you can turn off. And the return to home thing is really interesting because, yeah, on the face of it, it sounds like a really simple little change, and you kind of think, well, why can't you do that on any drone? But the safety feature there is if you're flying that, right to its last, it's down to 10%, and it wants to land, you override that and carry on down to 2% because the mission you're flying is absolutely critical. Perhaps the mission you're flying is worth the cost of your drone flying to the point where it drops out of the sky. That's the idea, isn't it? But if you've got someone who's unlocked that as a consumer, and they think, oh, I'll just fly down to 2-3% because I really want to get this shot before it gets dark, and then they lose their drone, it's not quite been as worth it.
No, exactly. And the other thing with military, they may not always want other people to know where their takeoff point is or what the landing point is as well. So by just landing or not returning at all, they've got that extra functionality there.
Yeah, for any reason the pilot can't input towards the back end of the mission, the last thing they might want is the drone coming back, showing everyone where they are, and then landing on the top of the head.
Exactly.
So it makes perfect sense. I think we've covered that pretty well with the SE and the security side. If anyone's got any questions on the security, a few people have commented on sort of and just kind of said, oh, it's cool that it's got the encrypted SD card and a few other bits and pieces. But any questions on it, please do post them, and we'll work through as we go through all the topics. But I think it's probably about time we mention what for most drones is the most important thing, which is the camera. It's always drones are just a tool to get a sensor somewhere where you can't normally get a sensor. That's the kind of cliched phrase, but it is really true. So obviously we've got three sensors on the Parrot, 3 cameras. So Asif, do you want to talk us through the 3 sensors, what they are, basic specs, and we'll have a few questions on that.
So on the 3 sensors, firstly, we worked with the leading brands. So the 2 visible cameras are manufactured by Sony. They're 21 megapixel 4K HDR cameras. One is a wide angle lens, and the other one is a zoom, and that zooms up to 32 times. And then on the thermal camera, we've got FLIR, and it's FLIR Boson 320 lens in there as well, our sensor in there. So again, we work best in class companies, and then you can blend the 2 things together, as you've seen in some of the videos we've done in the past as well.
And it's got a pretty impressive zoom as well, hasn't it, on the visual side?
Yeah, so it's a 32 times digital zoom, but I've certainly been at some demos where they've compared it to a 30 times optical zoom drone, and there was no difference in the quality of the image. So it's extremely sharp as well. So it's running our own algorithms as well as obviously having high quality brands that we're working with there.
Yes, it's that lossless thing, isn't it? So it although it's 32 times digital, up to a certain point it loses 0 quality, and then it obviously degrades slowly at a certain stage, which digital zoom always will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certainly from the testing we've done with police stuff, we've read registration plates from a couple of 100 meters. We've identified people leaving and entering vehicles at a kilometer. So there's certainly enough for what the drone is designed for. Yes, you're not going to get the level of quality you might get from, say, a 5 kilo, 25,000 pound industrial level piece of kit, but there isn't arguably nothing else in this class that has that level of quality at zoom.
Absolutely, and don't forget the gimbal as well, in terms of the way the gimbal can rotate as well. So it's a 250-degree gimbal on the drone, so you can look straight down and straight up as well, which is not always possible with most of the drones.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Normally the camera will be mounted down here, so you've got it front facing. We've had a question, Asif, on the cameras there. Just can it run with a combination of normal and thermal?
Yes,
so
it can.
I think you mentioned earlier there's the blending, isn't there? So you can blend the two palettes together.
And you can adjust that on a sliding scale as well. So, you know, how much thermal and how much visible you want to be able to do.
And then this is an interesting one, which isn't necessarily just about the camera, but is nighttime operation possible?
So nighttime operation is possible. However, you have to make sure that you are complying with the regulations. So we certainly have police and military users using it at nighttime. But obviously there's things you have to take into account as well when you're flying at nighttime, in terms of things like the vertical camera doesn't work at nighttime. The camera looks down, which helps on its landing and its positioning. And then obviously you have to bear in mind to take into account any telephone lines or cable or wires or telegraph poles, etc. as well. So you need to ensure you're complying with the regulations. Providing you're doing that and you've got the authority to do so, yes, you can.
Those are similar when you talk about stuff like watching out for obstacles. Similar with any drone is if you're doing a nighttime operation, you really want to have done a pre-flight survey in the daytime if possible. Obviously not always possible, especially in emergency services, but that's kind of the best thing to do. And then the two things on it, I think you mentioned sort of visibility and stuff. There is lighting systems. So there are some payloads for the Anafi USA. There is a lighting system by a company called Fox Fury.
Yeah.
Which we sell in combination with the system, which can be mounted onto it to make it ultra visible, so you've got greater line of sight. And then in terms of the downward sensor, I guess you just want to make sure you've got GPS when you're flying, so at least the drone has its own positional accuracy. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of the hardware, can it fly at nighttime? Yes, it can, but you need to take extra precautions to be able to do so.
Yeah. And then what about internally then? What about indoors? Because I know that there's a few things with this that makes it's not built specifically for internal use, but there are a few things it has which make it a bit better than other drones in this class.
Yes, absolutely. So it can completely, yes, you can fly in any GPS denied environment. And we did a test with the American government last year where the Anaphyl was flying inside a building along with another drone brand. And what they did, they flew it into an empty building, flew it into a lift. And as soon as the doors closed, the Anaphyl USA was still, the Anaphyl was still hovering. The other drone just landed. When the lift doors opened, the Anaphyl flew straight out again. So it was able to fly in a completely GPS denied environment. Obviously, if flying indoors or there's no GPS, you then have to be ensured that you're more in control of the drone as well, because as you know, they can drift on the x-axis without any GPS lock. But as long as you're able to do that, then yes. And I've certainly flown mine indoors many times.
I think if you expect it to be easy to fly indoors, you're mistaken. It can be really tricky, and it is a new skill to learn. But as I said, better than most for flying internally. I think for drones that are built for external use is what we'd say.
Yeah.
And while we're sort of around the environments, a bit of a loose connection this, but the environments it can fly in, I think it's worth talking a bit about the IP rating, because that's something certainly from my side when I speak to my customers. The feedback for years for the smaller drones, the quick launch systems, as we might call them, or the short range recon systems, was that if you want something that's IP rated, that can fly in rain, in strong winds, all that kind of stuff, you've got to spend a lot of money, get a very big system that takes 5-6 minutes to set up. You've got to lug through a field. It's too heavy, too big. Great for pre-planned missions, but nothing for this spontaneous use.
Yeah.
So when this came out, that for me was a huge tick. I immediately saw the benefit for my guys, the customers that I work with. So seems like a bit of a silly question, but why was that feature put in? Because I think I've kind of explained it myself in my why was that feature put in? How did you go about doing that? And what does that allow the drone to operate in?
Okay, so the straightforward, honest answer is that was a requirement of the US government as part of the drone.
That was the Blue UAS.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the IP53 rating is for water and for dust. So we've got a video that I think you've seen, Sam, where the drone is in a sandbox basically, and it's starting on and off, So that, for example, gives you an idea of a hot country, hot sandy environment where the drone can fly in sand and be protected. And then we have another video, which again, I think you've seen, Sam, where the drone is actually underneath a shower head, and it's been tested in our courtyard in Paris, and the shower's running straight on it. So absolutely, when it was developed, it was developed as a project for the US government, but when we decided to make it a product for the wider community, we wanted to keep those features in, because the feedback we were getting was that to get a drone that's only 500 grams with these sort of features and being IP rated was unheard of.
That's the thing, is it was always said that you can't get a drone that's this size and this price and have it an IP rating. It wasn't possible. And then suddenly something came out. And I think what it showed was it's always been possible, but manufacturers don't want to do that, because then they'll take away from the fact that you have to buy a bigger, more expensive system to get certain features. Being a bit cynical, I think that's probably the reasons behind it. And that's why it was so important that this came out with that IP rating. So with the 53, what kind of, if it's absolutely hammering it down, can you throw the drone up in that? If it's a light rain, kind of, where do you draw the line with operations?
So to get the 3 in the 53 rating, it's a 6-degree angle of rain at 5 minutes to get that. Obviously, so we would say light rain, the drone is fine. So if you're flying it and it starts to rain, you don't need to panic and get land the drone back straight away and have to protect all the motors and things like this. So with us, you're able to fly in light rain. And absolutely, our customers that are using the drone today aren't just military, aren't just police or fire. They're the general users as well. It could be inspection, surveying, and there is some, we're a global company, so some of the countries that we supply products to are very hot and also very cold and wet as well. So to be able to have a drone that can fly in all of those environments, is something that's a powerful tool. And in terms of the temperature range as well, it's not something we spoke about, but it works from -35 to +43 centigrade. So that's a huge temperature range as well.
I know from speaking to you as well that you guys have done, and we have with partners done some demos in some of the Scandinavian countries where it's been snowing, it's been freezing cold, and the drone's operated, to the same standard it would anywhere else. So certainly that's what I've seen, and I'm guessing they'll be similar with hot climates as well, where it's been used in the Middle East and in Africa and other areas that are a lot warmer than it is here.
Absolutely, and as part of my role at Parrot, I'm responsible for a region, and that region includes the Middle East and Africa, but also includes the Nordic countries as well. So I have really the full width of those temperature changes as well. So some of my customers in the Nordics flying extremely cold temperatures, and there was some cold weather testing they were doing in February of this year as well. And then, like you said, in the Middle East, in some very hot, dusty environments. And Anaphyl USA has been great for those sorts of environments.
Spot on. I think we've covered there the IP rating pretty comprehensively. There was a couple of questions that came in based around it. I think one of them was, does it operate in snow? I think it's a yes, isn't it? The same as it is with rain, as long as it's not, a blizzard.
Yes,
it will operate.
Yeah.
And there's a few more general questions around sort of general operations. So, what buy and take up have you gained from the UK government services? Which sort of services are currently running the Anafi USA? Probably more for me, isn't it? Really, Asif, that.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little bit careful and
we do, yes. I was just thinking that we can't go into too much detail. I'd say there's a large proportion of UK police forces that have drone teams operate drones of this class, often the Anafi USA. There are significant areas of the MOD that operate it as well, to a larger scale than any other UK markets, I think it's safe to say. And there's also use in certain other more, I guess you say, more specific areas of the police that aren't sort of more general public. So a large uptake across the board is the best way to put it, without going into detail, which will get us in any trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone is from the government and wants to talk to us separately about that, we're happy to have that conversation offline.
A lot of the guys that I've kind of hinted at there are happy to talk to people that work in the same world as them. So, if, as Asif said, if you are from that area, and someone you want references, or you want some evidence and business cases, that kind of stuff, we'll happily link you up with people that are operating them in that world.
Yeah.
And before we move on to, I was going to say we'll look at some of the sort of flight modes and some of the other features, but there is a question that's come in on the camera as well, which will be good to do before we move on. How does the FLIR Boson 320 thermal camera compare to other newly released similar sized drones with 640 resolution? And what Paul's done there is not so subtly hinted at the Mavic Advanced. I think it's clear that that's what he's talking about. So the new DJI Mavic Enterprise Advanced obviously fits into the same category as this, similar size, similar specs, brought out just after this, DJI's kind of version, if you like, of the Anafi USA. So what Paul's saying there is, how does it compare? And he's also put, what distance can you positively ID a person from standing, for example, in an open field? So, Asif, if you want to start with that one, I might jump in at some stage as well.
Yeah, I've not tried the one with a 640 in-house camera. Is the honest answer. But obviously, by partnering with people like FLIR, we have chosen the best in class. FLIR is the world leader in thermal sensors. So by partnering with them, we're ensuring that the 320 resolution is as best as it can be. And then in terms of some of our competitor products, I said some of the other drones that might have 640 resolution don't have an IP rating, whereas we do. So it gives you the extra functionality there as well.
Yeah, and I think what's important from my side, from Coptrz side here, is we are drone agnostic. We don't just sell the Anafi USA. We don't just sell the Mavic Enterprise Advanced. Although this presentation and this discussion is based around the Parrot drones, which of course it is, if someone approaches and the other option is a better option, we're not going to force something like this on them. That being said, with what Asif said there, a great example is I was speaking to a police force earlier today who are almost entirely coastal in their operations. They're looking at the two options and kind of trying to decide which one to go for. And I've steered them more towards the Anafi USA because they have more rain where they're based. They have stronger winds. Features like the hand launch feature, because they're launching off beaches, looking at stuff like the plank systems to then launch and land off boats, all that kind of stuff makes this a better option. Other areas, the DJI drone might be a better option, but certainly what Asif said there, the IP rating, but also the security side, if that's more important, that little upgrade in camera quality, yes, it's great to have a better quality camera, but if you need something like an IP rating, it's not going to overrule that requirement. Is that fair to say, Asif? I don't want to make it sound like I'm belittling your drone while we've got you on the webinar, but I'm trying to remain as impartial as possible there.
No, and that's one of the reasons why we work with Coptrz is we know that you're drone agnostic or brand agnostic, and you will do whatever's best for the customer. And we also know that people have a fleet of drones as well. Some of those might be Parrot, some of those might be DJI or Sky Hero or any other brand as well, Wingtree, etc. So we don't have a problem with that, but we know what we are focused on as a company, and we know exactly what we're good at as well.
Yeah, and on that, a great example of that is you won't see a police force have 150 BMWs as their fleet cars. They won't do it. Because what happens if there's an issue and there's a recall or whatever it may be, and they're out of vehicles? And it should be the same mindset with drones. Is when you're building a fleet, you do have to do a bit of mix and matching. You'll have one that you undoubtedly prefer and maybe use more operationally, and then maybe you'll have some that are maybe more for training, for backups. But you want to mix and match a little bit because if there is any issues, for example, with Brexit happening recently, with equipment coming over, especially from say China, can be trickier. And you need to make sure you've got cover. So that's a massive segue there from Paul's question about the camera all the way to Brexit. So I think that was very well done from the both of us. We managed to fit Brexit in somewhere. We had another question which I thought we'd answer before we move on to the flight modes. Really good question from a fellow called Matt. What technology does it have to prevent signal interference? So obviously the connection between the drone and the controller is the 2.4 and the 5.8, and it signal hops. Is that right, Asif?
Yeah, so the 5.8 is on the SE rather than the standard, so it works at 2.4 gigahertz as the general consumer one. So it works on WPA2 protection, and it's 128-bit encryption key on that as well. So basically, what the drone does, it automatically scans for the strongest signal, and it locks onto that. And then will then hop it as it needs to. Also, what you're then able to do, if you know there's a frequency that is better for you, you can manually go into that frequency and lock into that as well within the bandwidth, and it then enables you to fly easier, basically.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, and it's always going to be environmental as well, as it is with any drone. You know, I think you guys say up to a 4-kilometer range. Is the maximum range, but obviously if we take this out now and fly it down the centre of Leeds, which of course we do, you're not going to get a 4-kilometer range. There's buildings, there's signals everywhere, there's interference, all that kind of stuff. We'll do one more question before we move on to the final few bits that I wanted to discuss, the stuff I wanted to put to you. Really interesting question here from Fraser saying, can any customer or country buy an Anafi USA? It sounds like if it got into the wrong hands, it could also be quite a difficult UAV for friendly forces to combat. What do you think about that, Asif?
So the Anafi USA is classed as a dual-use product by the American government. And what that means is that there are some countries which are excluded from us supplying the product to. So there's an exclusion list created by the EU and the American government, and we adhere to that.
So the short answer really is any country you kind of wouldn't expect to be able to sell it to, you probably can't, which is the same as a lot of products worldwide. But pretty much any country you expect to would, you can do. And when he says it's quite difficult for friendly forces to combat, I think maybe what Fraser's hinting at there is with the SE having being able to flight data empty, being able to not have everything encrypted, not know where the drone is, that kind of stuff. But there's restrictions on where the SE will be sold to.
Yeah. So
it's almost a whole different drone, isn't it, really? Although it shares the same name.
Yeah, I would say that every SE that's been sold, for example, in the UK, every SE drone of ours that's been sold, either USA or the standard Anaphyl, I know who has bought that drone, and I've been involved in the process personally. So we ensure completely they are only purchased by government entities. So we're really strict on that.
Yeah, it's the simplest fix, isn't it? And I know certainly from my side, if I say we've got an order for say 10 or 12 or 15 units going to whatever area, then we'll make sure you guys are aware of who the piloting command is. And it's always, as you said there, it's always either defence or police. Yeah. Pretty much exclusively. Very rarely is it anyone else. Hopefully that allays Fraser's sort of concerns there. So we'll just move on to a couple of other points I want to discuss before we round up with a few last questions. There is some stuff around sort of flight modes and other features that are on this that weren't on the previous versions. Now I've picked up two of them that I think are really important. One of them is the autonomous flights, so sort of the mission planning side, and one is the coordinates side, so the little crosshairs that you see on the controller. So I don't know if you can tell us a little bit about both of those features and sort of what they are and why they were put in.
Yeah, so flight plan, actually, we've always had that in all of our Anaphyl range because it's part of FreeFly 6. So with flight plan, you can literally, as it sounds, you can create a flight plan and you can say, drone fly here to another waypoint, be at a certain height, look at a certain direction, and then from there, go to next location, etc., etc. Once you set that all up, we press takeoff and the drone does that automated flight for you. So that's great if you're flying you want to inspect a certain structure, for example, the drone can do it all for you without you having to be in control of managing the controls the whole time. And then what you're also able to do is things like touch and fly as well. So when the Free Fly app is on your device, you press and hold the map at any location, and the drone will fly to that location that you've pinned, basically. So it makes it really easy to fly. In addition to that, there's other modes as well which are useful. Things like follow me, so the drone will obviously follow you, or what we call cameraman mode. And what that will be is the drone will then follow an object, be it a vehicle, a person, an animal, for example. You're in control of the drone and you're flying it completely normally, but the camera then focuses on the point of interest as you're flying. So that makes it great for both inspection type uses, but also obviously for public safety and defense uses as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what about that? The coordinates feature, because that is a new one, isn't it? That's something that wasn't in the older version.
And that's for the Anaphyl USA, and basically in the Free Fly app again, when you go into the map, you get crosshairs, and you can move that around, and you can get the lat long or the MGRS coordinates of where the drone is looking at, basically. So that is great for you can see where the drone is or what it's looking at. It's great for pinpointing exactly any particular locations or coordinates.
I think the benefits for that are pretty self-explanatory. That's anything search and rescue based, where you're trying to coordinate ground teams. Huge benefit. And I know from speaking from guys in fire services, police forces that do search and rescue missions, they'll often call the police helicopter out, and all the helicopter will do is provide lighting and coordinates, and that's basically it. And it's cost them thousands of pounds to call it out. And we mentioned the Fox Fury lighting systems earlier. You've got a lighting system you can attach, and you've got the ability to give coordinates for a drone that you can carry in the back of a car. I think the only thing, Asif, that we haven't really mentioned is the title of the webinar, and that is the launch in 60 seconds element.
Yes.
And I didn't leave that to the end on purpose. I just forgot. So what we do is if we discuss that, because there's also the hand launch, which I think fits in quite nicely with that. And it is part of the getting it up and down as quickly as possible and being ready to operate at a minute's notice. So is that something that was that purposefully designed to be quick launch, or is that kind of a byproduct of it being a small, compact drone?
No, we learned from the previous Anaphyl thermal or the previous Anaphyl range, and it's very quick to get up in the air. So, we say you can do it as fast as 55 seconds. And one of my police customers from another country messaged me that they say he's got it down to 1 minute and 4 seconds, but he's not quite there at 60 yet. But it is that quick to get up in the air. So that's great for, like I said, it's not just for police and defense who the advantages are obvious on that, but also if you're doing an inspection job and some surveying or some construction site, do you want to spend 15 minutes getting a drone together, putting the bits together? Admittedly, that drone will be more powerful, but the Anaphyl USA, with its features and technology it's got in it, makes it really powerful cameras and the sensors, but it makes it really quick to deploy as well. So your whole project time is really reduced.
And there's part of what you mentioned there as well is really interesting about saying, because it's maybe it's not as capable as a larger, bigger drone, but if you've got a job which doesn't require a 5-6 kilo drone, if you use something of that size, the risk to whatever it may be, people, public, wherever, it is a lot higher than something like this, which weighs 483 grams or something, certainly sub 500 grams.
It's actually exactly 500.
Exactly 500. Yeah. Maybe I was doing it without the stickers and the SD cards. So yeah, it's a lot lighter than a larger system, so the risk is a lower. If the worst does happen, you're probably going to get a sore head rather than a trip to the hospital or worse. And I think that's something that's really worth bearing in mind with, the larger drone systems. Longer to set up, yes, harder to transport, but also potentially higher risk if anything does go wrong as well.
Yeah, and that goes, when we launched the Anaphyl thermal in 2019, The types of users, when it came to police and military, they were classing it as a first responder drone. Uh, and that exactly where that drone fits. So, if the police or the fire brigade thought something was happening, they could quickly get an anaphyl up in the air, find out what's going on. If something was going on and they needed a bigger drone, then sure, then go and get that. But not every area has the luxury of having one of these big, expensive drones readily available. So having a first responder drone made it ideal for them.
Yeah, exactly, spot on. I think we've certainly covered everything that I'd noted down to run through. Before we move on to, there's a few more questions. Before we move on to those, is there anything else, Asif, you can think of that's an important feature or something we've not touched on that the drone has that you want to run through?
Yeah, it's don't forget about the noise on this drone as well. So it's only 79 decibels at half a meter up from the ground. And basically what that means is that it is extremely quiet. So
we've got the serrated props. I don't know if they'll come through on the camera from that distance, but is that an effect on the pitch rather than the volume?
Yeah, so basically what that does, it's a whale design propeller as well. So what that's done, it's although it's a larger drone than the standard Anaphyls, it's the same amount of decibels as the Anaphyl you've got behind you. But it's a deeper pitch, and that makes it harder for the human ear to hear. And when we've been doing tests with customers, when they're actually listening out for it from 150 meters away, they can't hear it. But the average person, if you're not actually tuned in, looking and hearing, looking out for the drone, you can't hear it. So yeah, that is a key feature. Obviously, it has its police and public safety defense uses for that, but also for inspection and surveying. If you're doing a job,
I was just going to say that's something that people don't really think of, isn't it? You don't really want to draw too much attention to yourself when you're operating, because the last thing you want is someone going, "Oh, what is that? Is that a drone? Is it? What's that for? Where did you get that from? And how fast can it go? How high can it fly?" And all those stupid questions that I'm sure a lot of the guys on here who run or operate in drone companies have been asked by members of the public, and often maybe slightly less polite questions as well.
Absolutely, and I've seen that as well. And you're out in town and you hear high pitched word, and you look up and you start looking for the drone. With this, because that pitch and because that decibel level is different compared to competitors, just makes it much easier to fly. And obviously the fact that it's not a big bulky drone, it's something this small, makes it really easy. It makes it really portable as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it comes, and then we start talking, what we haven't spoken about is the battery life. So it's 32-minute battery life. It comes with 3 batteries in the box. Important feature to talk about on the batteries is they're a smart battery. So you got the indicator on the outside telling the battery strength. And it's a USB-C charging as well. So with that, obviously it comes with a charger block with the drone, but also you can charge it from a power bank, you can charge it from your laptop, you can charge it from the car, etc., etc. That means you can charge it on the go, rather than having to be reliant on a big charger block or a big power block, basically.
I've been that a few times as well, as if on heading to demos and stuff. You check everything before you go, but as always the case, you get there and you've forgotten to charge the controller or something, or you've had to do an update and it's ran it down. Something's happened, and you can bang it straight into your car charger because it's just a USB-C. The controller as well as all the batteries. And if you've got, say, an hour drive, by the time you're there, you're fully charged and you're ready to go. And it happens a lot, and it is a big plus that it's wherever you are, you're probably going to have an adapter, a wire that will charge it.
Yeah, and it's just convenience, isn't it? The fact that you're not stuck to a mains PowerPoint. And it's the size of everything as well. It's like when I carry my laptop around, I have to carry a big mains adapter around with me as well. Even though my laptop's tiny, the mains pack is huge.
Well, the funny thing with my laptop is a USB-C charger. So my laptop charger actually charges the Parrot accessories. So now I can take one charger, and my phone does the same. One charger will do my phone, my laptop, and the Anaphyl batteries and controller. So talk about convenience. It's as easy as it can get, really, at the minute. I think that's. Is there anything else on the? We've not discussed what comes in the box aside from the batteries. Obviously, you get the controller, the drone itself, 3 batteries, power pack, spare props, the hard heli case, tablet holder.
Yeah.
Anything else that we're missing off that, or is that the general list?
That's it. And you get obviously all the cables, the USB-C cables that you need to charge your batteries as well. So you get 1 cable per battery and for the charger. And then, in terms of what else you've spoken about, I think we covered most of the key topics on the drone in terms of its capability. But the real thing is as well, as I said, it's just so small, so light, so compact, which makes it a really capable drone. And don't be fooled by the size of it, because sometimes people think that's really small. What's the wind resistance like, for example? It can't be very, very good in the wind. This is 14.7 meters per second wind resistance. So it's incredibly powerful in terms of the wind resistance.
25 miles an hour?
It's 50 kilometers per hour, so it's 30 miles an hour for wind, and it's 80 kilometers per hour gust resistant as well. So, even though it's small, it's incredibly powerful.
Brilliant. So I think what we should do, Asif, is we'll run through a few of the questions we've got in. I think we should be able to get through them all. If we don't, I'll answer. If you've asked what we don't get to, I'll answer after the webinar. So we'll make sure we get through them all. So someone's asked, is it tested with hailstones as well? I don't think anyone in Paris has sat with a bag of gravel and thrown stones at the drone. I can't imagine you've tested it to hail, have you, Asif?
No, I personally wouldn't fly a drone in hailstones, because the propellers, I've seen what hailstone can do to greenhouses and things like that. So
you can damage a car with hail. I agree. I think hail and lightning best avoid. Don't mess with that kind of stuff. Another good question on the sort of the drone regulation side is, what license would I need to fly the Anafi USA within the UK? So it's an interesting question, because it's not as simple now as just what it previously was. Is you need the PFCO license, if you will. So it is slightly different. The GVC will allow you to fly to a greater scope, because the Anafi USA is so light, and I think it sits in that transitional category, as if the A2 transitional category. So with the A2 C of C, you could also do, most operations that are required with some limitations still in place. So, Andrew, depending on what you're looking to do specifically, get in touch with one of our training team, and they'll be able to advise on which one of the 2 regs is the best way to go.
Yeah, and it's some of the regulations haven't been finalised yet in terms of testing for the drones as well. So again,
we actually did have a question on the CE rating, Asif. So that's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So on our website, on the Parrot newsroom section of our website, you'll see something we put out on New Year's Day, actually, in terms of what we believe it to be. So we believe it to be a class C1, but the accreditation agencies still haven't been fully briefed yet, and haven't been fully set up yet. So we're waiting for us, and the other drone brands are all waiting for this to be clearly defined, and then start the process of going through the accreditation for that. So we're in this transition period right now, but we've got full information actually on the Parrot newsroom. And I said, if you look for the release that was on New Year's Day of this year, we've got detailed information there.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the thing to take away from that is no one is 100% sure exactly what the future holds for that, but all the manufacturers have kind of said the same thing, in that they're going to make sure their drones are supported and operable in the UK, and obviously Parrot there, as Asif said, no different. They're going to make sure it's going to be usable within the UK, definitely.
Yeah, and I personally, I speak with the DFT, for example, and the CAA. In fact, I have a call with them next week. So these topics, these are current topics, should we say? Yeah,
exactly. I'm astonished that we haven't had a question yet on how much it costs. That's normally the first thing that gets asked, is how much is it? and I'm really surprised. So I'm going to answer it anyway because it always gets asked, and someone must have just forgotten this time. So the with the standard USA package is £6,500 plus VAT. That's the standard drone. So this one, 3 batteries, all that kind of stuff. We at Coptrz do a few different packages. So we do a basic one with a bit of training and extra support, which is 6,995. We do an upgraded package with Pix4D training for the mapping, which I think there's although we've not touched on it in this webinar, the one following this is specifically on Pix4D. So if you are interested in Pix4D, stay tuned for the next webinar. But we do packages of Pix4D with the drone. The SE version is priced on application. So obviously, if you are from the world where you might need the SE, get in touch. So if I say it's not a huge amount more than the standard version, but we'll happily disclose that to the relevant customers. And I think what I want to do, Asif, just to tie up, because we've had this asked in a couple of different forms throughout, and it's what I like to end with anyway, is what does the future hold for Parrot, and what does the future hold for the Anafi USA? Are there any future versions? Is there a version 2 maybe on the horizon at some stage? If not, what else are Parrot looking towards in the future?
So as a company, we're a technology company, so we always have something in development. But typically a drone takes, several years to develop. It takes many, many millions of pounds or euros in this case to develop. So we've always got something in the plans, but we never talk about it.
Looking like it. You should have had a career as a politician, Asif. That was a perfect non-answer to a very tricky question. So I apologize for that one. No, I mean, I know from our discussions that Parrot are always looking at new developments, and wherever the market heads, I'm sure you guys are going to be, at the forefront of what the next steps are, shall we say?
Yeah, and I said that it's not really where the market heads, because we like to create the market as well.
Yeah,
as we did with the AR drone.
Brilliant. Well, Asif, thank you so much for joining us today. We've nattered away for an hour, and it's absolutely flown by. I think we have answered everyone's questions. As I said, I will scan through, and if we've missed any, we'll loop back around. All that remains to say, Asif, thanks so much for joining us again for another webinar. A little bit of a different format, but I think a little bit more fun for the guys that might be a bit fatigued from watching so many of these over the past couple of days. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Everyone that joined for the webinar, once again, thanks for tuning in. I'm sure we'll speak to some of you in the future, and enjoy the rest of our presentations throughout the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.